Hello again, care leaders. My guest today is Michael Butcher, and we're going to talk about why data is a critical path to success in care. For those of you who don't know Michael, he's the finance director at Blackadder Corporation, who owns 6 older people's care homes. He's a chartered accountant of over 16 years and a self-professed data and analytics geek. A very interesting fact about Michael is that he is the creator and owner of a pair of Care Leaders Network branded boxer shorts. But that's a podcast for another day. The care sector has seen a dramatic increase in the amount of software that is used, all of which provides data in some form or another. Getting this data to a point where it is useful is a challenge that all care leaders are facing. With Michael being a self-professed data geek, he is perfectly placed to share his insights on this important topic. Interesting things that you can expect to learn from this episode include why Michael sees his role as less being the FD and more being the head of data in his organization, the harsh realities of drowning in data and how to avoid doing so, why meaningful use of data and analytics cannot turn into a tick box exercise for care providers, the importance of aligning data and analytics strategy with the organization's culture and values, and much, much more. My name's Simon Parker, and this is the Care Leaders Network podcast. So without further ado, please welcome Michael Butcher. So Michael, would it be fair to say that you are a self-professed data analytics and Power BI super geek?
I wouldn't say super geek yet. I'm definitely a data analyst. I am definitely an Excel geek, but that's my background in accountancy right there. I came into it at a time, sort of 2008, where the audit profession was just starting to migrate into much more data analysis, and so the skill set of go and play with these data analysis tools was something that was really valuable. And the first part of my career in the profession was actually, Michael's a really good data guy. He can do all this data analysis. And it's just a skill set that I've grown with. It allowed me to transition into forensics, into corporate finance, doing financial modeling, and then into a couple of industry roles where that skill set just gave me an edge and an opportunity to do things. So I've been lucky in some respect that actually my role has led me to be a data geek. But it's much more than just how do you use the data and how do you analyze it. What I get to be really passionate about now is how is the data structured and how do we use the data. So I'm now asking much bigger questions about the whats and the hows and the whys, rather than, yes, boss, I can do this.
So you're kind of taking a step away from the functional side of things and thinking kind of more strategically with the data. I guess an important point to highlight as well. Obviously, you've explained kind of the background and why at heart you're a numbers guy. But how's that kind of translated into your role at Blackadder? Because obviously there's the finance world of the data and analytics side of things, but obviously the care world is becoming increasingly data driven as well.
Exactly. So I think so. When I first joined the family firm full time, so 2017, we were still back in what I consider very much to be the old way of doing care. It was all paper based. Excel was scary to a lot of people, and we didn't have much data. So yes, we had numbers in the finance system, but it didn't really mean much. If you were lucky, you got an average weekly fee number. If you were lucky, you got a salaries as a percentage of revenue number. But that was really the amount of data that we had. And we realized very quickly of me joining that we needed to fundamentally change how we do data in the organization. So although I think the title finance director is useful to explain where my sort of the core part of my role lies, actually I do see myself much more as head of data. And I think that within social care, we do need people who control the data And I don't see that as a head of IT function. I don't see it as a head of finance function. I see it actually above those two functions, because actually care, data, care, IT, finance, all of that data just comes together. So I don't think social care is unique like that. I think a number of organizations probably exist in exactly the same, have exactly the same issue and exactly the same data requirements. I think it's just very pronounced within social care at the moment because of the transition we've gone through from, in our particular case, 2017, where paper care plans, EMARS isn't something that is there in any real shape yet, to 2024, where we're now talking about an Internet of Things. We're talking about having falls detection. We've got, and in our personal lives, we're living with smart fridges which automatically order food for us. And that is going to be coming into social care, because if you have it at home, why can't you have it in your care home?
It's a really interesting one. The emergence of data and analytics within the care sector. Another one of the members of the Care Leaders Network, a guy called Mark McDonald at Tanglewood Care Group. He's the I think director of data and analytics, or data and insights, or something to that effect. And that title. Different versions of that title seem to be becoming more and more popular now. Mark's actually come from a care quality background, but because he's a numbers guy and because he's a data guy, he's looking at all of the various different systems, and he's thinking at the moment about kind of how do we then create overarching governance structures, and how can we use the analysis to think about things like falls prevention and being generally kind of more proactive and all of that type of stuff. I think we'll probably get to a point where we're actually going to have an awful lot of data. How do we then go about making it meaningful? Obviously, that's kind of a whole different question, and I guess that's probably I'm sure that will be something that we get stuck into to today. But you're right. I think the emergence of data and insights and analytics and all of that type of stuff is we're on the rise. We seem to be on the cusp of some quite exciting things as well. And my hope from this conversation today, because this is obviously an area of expertise for you and something obviously that you're really, really passionate about, I guess I want to try and inspire the audience to think about their own organization and start thinking, okay, so what's the digital, technological, data and analytics journey that we can go on as an organization and as a team, so that we can better support the people that we care for, so that we can better support the people on our team that are delivering the care, so that we can make more data-driven strategic decisions around how we choose to operate and build our sustainable business and all of that type of good stuff. So that being the case, I'm going to start with a nice big open question, and just ask, so why do you think it's so important, the kind of generally the role of data and analytics specifically for the care sector?
As I said before, care has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. We are no longer in the same industry that we were in back in 2019, 2020. The world has changed. And we're fundamentally responding to a different economic environment. We have to be more efficient as organizations. We have to do more with less. The regulatory environment is changing, and will probably change again in the next couple of years as the new CQC environment shakes itself out. But we need to be more proactive in how we report and the information that we provide. We're in a different technological environment. So the demands from relatives and residents are for high levels of visibility and transparency. And we have this Internet of Things where everything is interconnected. So we have two options. We can either reject all of that and go, no, actually, we think, no, care still needs to be this old way of working, or we have to adapt to this new environment and say, okay, electronic care plans, electronic medication system, falls detection, silent nurse call systems, other data capture systems like Pain Check, which we've started using, and it genuinely has been transformative in some cases. We've got to use that data. It's not good enough anymore just to have it in place. there has to be a why, there has to be a so what behind it. And so if we're moving in this direction, and I think the general consensus is we're all going to have to, then we're in the position of, okay, we need increasing amounts of data. We need a team group that probably don't actually have that much experience in data analytics. So there's a skill upgrade there. And it's not just us. It's not just us as providers. It's our third-party stakeholders. It's the local authority. It's CQC. They're in the same position. And so if we take the totality of data that we have and just dump it on people, they're not going to understand it. They're not going to be able to analyze it, and they will probably drown in it. And so it's incredibly inefficient is the wrong word. It's counterproductive to have all this data and then not do the analysis piece, which is much bigger than just, oh, I'm going to manipulate the data. That's just going to cause our businesses to collectively fail. And as a greater piece, it will cause social care to be inefficient. And despite everything that I want to do for our own business, my priority is making sure that social care works and is the best that it possibly can be. So we need to have overarching systems that talk to each other. We need to have the CQC and local authorities and all the other regulators that we now seem to have, which therefore includes the NHS and everybody else, all going through the same process of saying, okay, how do we do data? How do we do the analysis? And then how do we have this black box that it feeds through and then spits out and says, okay, here's how we're going to proactively provide the information and use it to demonstrate what we're doing well and what we're not, and what we're not doing and what we're not doing well. And so consistently improving and doing better. I think it's already now, given everything, all the data centers that we have, I think it's already a core requirement of care to have data analysis within our organizations.
So is part of your concern almost like, okay, so you're looking at your business and you're thinking, okay, so how do we make this meaningful for us on a kind of in the it's not a microcosm, but it kind of outside of the kind of the macro, if you like, of the wider care sector, trying to make that data meaningful to be able to achieve bigger and greater things with it. I guess is part of your concern that people might almost take this as take data and analytics, the concept of it, and almost turn it into just another tick box exercise. And then all of that kind of effort and the investment is fundamentally wasted. Is that kind of part of your concern around what could happen if people don't take the bull by the horns appropriately?
So if we use Nourish as our electronic care management system. Other options are available. I think, but from what I'm aware of, what I'm about to say is true for other bits of software. There is inbuilt analytics within Nourish, and they've built a sort of an internal dashboard, they call it Insights, that allows some visibility of what is going on. We've been with Nourish since 2018, and so we've seen the development of that. The first thing they started with was a report on the number of residents that you had and whether they were residential or nursing. That, yes, it's data analytics. Yes, it's data that they have, and it may be useful to someone in the organization, but it's not really useful. And it's, I think, a really good example of data analytics for data analytics' sake. So my concern is that we have all the data and we're not using it to fulfill our purpose, which, frankly, is to provide better care. What we did yesterday is no longer good enough. We must always do more. So I think for me, if I had to enunciate my biggest concern about data analysis, it's that we're not using it to inform what the next stages are. That we're just doing it for its own sake. We're trotting out reports, we're sending them into CQC, and you are right. I don't think it could ever be a tick box. But I think if we will be in the position where there are going to be some providers who may go, yes, we have a dashboard, yes, it's looked at, yes, our managers provide reports, off the basis of it, but no one's learning anything, nothing's changing, we're not improving. And that's what social care has to be about, that constant improvement.
So it's avoiding falling into the trap of it becoming a tick box exercise, and the opposite end of that is creating that feedback loop so that we can keep pioneering and drive progress forward. That's what you're seeing as being the ultimate goal with having all of the data from the various different sources.
I think it's the ultimate goal of social care. I think this is the one thing that keeps me passionate and inspired about the sector, is that no matter how bad our day is, and we can have some shockers, right? You always come in the next day and go, right, this has got to be better. How do I make it better? And you could go right down to the microcosm of one individual person that we're providing care for. We can go for an entire, in our case, care home. We can go to the group, or we can go to the entire sector. And I think all of us are passionate about making it better.
I mean, that's certainly one of the big aspirations for the Care Leaders Network, just bringing people together and getting them to connect, share, and collaborate, getting rid of all of those silos in the care sector that are holding it back, that are stifling the innovation and all of the progress. That's something that, that from our perspective, we want to try and facilitate that. And I love, you and I obviously talk quite a lot, and we have some really, really quite, really inspiring conversations. Which actually segues me to another point that I think is probably worthwhile highlighting. So I think you and I have, both of us are quite philosophical chaps. I think both of us have talked philosophy around the kind of the nature of care, the economics kind of more at a more macro level, and then the economics of care. I know that the last time we were together, we were philosophizing about leadership as a subject as well. Being the philosophical chaps that we are, I want to get into the philosophy of implementing data and analytic systems within the care sector, because I think that the maybe for some that will seem like a slightly highfalutin concept, but for me, philosophy is about kind of the state of being and the activities and the actions and things that the framework that kind of behaviors and things sit in. How do people apply philosophy to meaningfully implementing data and analytic systems?
I think you're right. I think it's important that this isn't too highfalutin, but we need, just to bring this down to what is really important. Our philosophy of care is linked to our values, and every care home has its own values, mostly because we're now regulated to do so by CQC, but we all know what our intrinsic care values are. Any actions that we have to be aligned to the values. If you don't, you simply just don't get the consistency of action, and no one follows it up. So if we're going to say, right, we are going to do data and analytics as a thing to do, as an action, but it's not aligned to our values, then there is absolutely no point in doing it, because you won't get any positive outcomes from it. Or the outcomes you get just simply won't align with anything. And also sort of, and aligned to that, the why are we doing this question is almost as important as the outcome of the task. Take it back to the most basic element of care. Why do we as an organization spend so much time looking at what food we provide in a menu? Because we want it to be nutritious. We want it to, the residents not to lose weight. We want, all these individual subtasks, but actually why are we doing it? Because we want our residents, the people we care for, to have a nice meal. We know that they may be with us for 2 years at that. There's, can't do the maths. Maybe 2,000 meals that they'll have with us. Each one must be great, and that's our value speaking there. The emphasis that we put on Christmas, for example, because we know it very may well be that individual's last Christmas. It's got to be great. Those are our values speaking. And the same with data analytics. Why do we do it? Because we want to make sure that every resident has a better day. Yes, we've got some core care KPIs, like, we want very few falls. We want to manage the behaviors that challenge. We want to make sure that in our care homes we don't have any acquired pressure sores, and our monthly audits all align to that. That if there is a pressure sore acquired in care home, big red mark on that one. If there is if we split our weights report into 4 separate BMI categories. Residents with a BMI under 30, if they lose weight, big red mark against that. We analyze our accidents and incidents in minute levels of detail because we want to be able to understand what is happening and where, and whether we can improve our environment or the care that we provide, or general safety levels, to ensure that the individuals we care for aren't at risk. So we start with our philosophy of care. What are we trying to achieve, and why? And why are we doing it? And I think that if providers, if they're starting their data analytics journey, or they're going through it, it's always a really good question to ask yourself: what do I want to achieve as an outcome of this? And so, what are the steps that I need to put in place to make that happen?
I guess, like, once you've got your why, your what, and your how mapped out, using your philosophy of care as almost a framework to sit within. So what are the next steps that you need to take with that data then to drive towards that, the concept of success, and that feedback loop that you've been talking about?
So again, this is philosophy of care and the philosophy of the organization. Going back to our conversation about leadership, our approach is increasingly one of coaching and empowering our teams, so that when it comes to the data analytics piece, we are now expecting and demanding our managers and the deputies, the seniors, the nurses, in fact the entire team, to look at the reports that we're providing them and ask the simple question: so what? What does this information mean? What can I do with it? What can I change to ensure that the people that we care for have a better day, or week, or month, or life? And just to expand on that a little bit, we want our care assistants to feel empowered that they can make a fundamental change to a resident's room, or to how they're performing an activity, to make a better day. It shouldn't be the case that it has to come from on top and be pushed down. There should be a bottom up approach to this. But we can only have that reflective process of so what, if you've got great data behind it. And that data's got to be visualized in a way that it's easy for the team to understand and make decisions about, and where those outcomes align with our care homes, individuals' philosophies of care. And the data's got to be able to show the improvements there. So, as I mentioned, going back to weight loss as an example, the report has got to show more green than red. And managers and people in care like the simplicity of that. We want a report that shows more green than red. Okay, well, make it show it. It's got to show long-term trends, because if someone has lost weight over 3 months, well, what's been going on beyond that? And if they've been losing weight for 6 months, actually, but now they're starting to gain weight, we need to make sure that we can see that short-term improvement versus the longer-term trend. And then for us, and we're data geeks, and it doesn't help that I'm me, and Jeff, CEO, my dad, is also he would never admit this, but he is also a data geek, and he's properly into the minutiae, which means that we do go down rat holes and we ask daft questions. But our weights reports are now looking at not answering the question of why do individuals lose weight. So we're asking questions of is it when they're eating? Is it what they're eating? Are they not eating certain meals? Are they not eating certain meals on certain days? What's their fluid intake like? Who are they sat with at meals? All these various little components that we want our reporting to be able to help the team and identify the trends, so that the team can then go and say, so what? Now I can make this change, and now I can make today better, and tomorrow even better. And when you get it right, it self perpetuates. It makes it does work. It's hard work, but it does work. I'm just as an example, we had a report on accident incidents, and we were just seeing some really weird trends between what was happening at weekends and weekdays. Spoke to the team about it. Three really critical and key actions. So the weekend staff, we try and rotate the team, but there were some people who the management just didn't see regularly. So, okay, specific training, specific input, we need to talk about that. The Friday night shift, there seemed to be something that was weird with the handover. Certain stuff wasn't being passed over with the Saturday morning team. So, we spoke to them about it and got the handover better. And finally, we spoke to some specific relatives who were only coming in at the weekends, and we spoke to them about some very specific behaviours that we were seeing from residents. And that you can only get that from great data, and that delivers better care outcomes.
Yeah, so you can see how the kind of the intersection between having the right data sets and then being able to ask the right questions to be able to try and support the person in whether it would be their kind of eating and drinking habits or whatever it might be. I guess that concept applies completely across the board to everything, but knowing that you've got access to that data and being able to see it and understand it and assimilate it and act upon it, that's the key thing. Talk to me about Power BI. I know it's a subject that you're a product rather, I should say, that you're rather excited by. To be honest, I've been aware that it's a thing for a long time, but I haven't really understood a lot about the use cases until comparatively recently. We hosted an evening focused on digital transformation 2.0, so kind of it's like the kind of the next layer of innovation within the care sector. And there were a couple of mentions of Power BI and the applications and things. Rather than me try and shuffle through trying to explain some of the stuff that I'd kind of understood from others, explain to the audience about what Power BI is as a product, and then also bring to life how you then use it to create those feedback loops in a really meaningful way.
So Power BI is a Microsoft Office product. The licensing for it has changed an awful lot in the last 2 years, but fundamentally there is a Power BI per user license, which I think costs about £9 per month. That allows you to go out and build and review a number of reports in the product itself, which either sits on your desktop or can sit in the cloud on a portal. Most build is done on your desktop, and then there is some build, but also a lot of the pushing out of reports tends to happen in the Power BI portal. This is Microsoft at the moment are going through a lot of their what was previously known as the Power product, so Power Automate, Power BI, and so on, and they're putting that into something called Fabric, which is just Microsoft rebranding, but it's quite exciting about how they're deliberately thinking about how data should be being manipulated and moved, and all automated within itself for large data organizations. And I guess social care is there. That's actually quite exciting. How does it work? It's if you think of your data as a series of tables, essentially what Power BI is doing is saying, I'm going to allow you to both amalgamate and analyze individual tables, kind of like you would do using pivot tables and graphs in Excel. Now, as soon as you mention pivot tables in Excel, everyone goes, "Oh, that's really scary." I think what Power BI does is it makes it a lot simpler in terms of some of the manipulation of the data. The downside of using Power BI is it is all done in its own language. So there are two main options. One is you can use a language called DAX. The other is you can write some SQL code to analyze your data. So for those of us who are major Excel users, DAX is kind of similar to the Excel language, and SQL, and I'm going to get shot down for this. SQL is kind of similar to the VBA and the macros. So if you know a bit of that, then it'll help. But fundamentally, they're new languages to learn. On the plus side, and this is a huge plus, Copilot, which is Microsoft's AI product, is amazing at delivering both DAX and SQL code because it's a Microsoft product and therefore knows the DAX, knows DAX and knows Power BI really well. So you've got a cheat code in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And then in terms of proliferating the data, each file gets published into the cloud. It sits on a portal and got a couple of options. You can give people access to the portal as is. You can issue the reports as PDFs. We do that, and we have a number of automated reports that go out daily, weekly, and monthly. And we also have a dashboard. Now, unfortunately, Power BI used to have a completely free dashboard up until the 31st of December this year. So you could access off your desktop, you can see all your apps and reports through that. They've now removed that, but you can still get at it through Microsoft Teams, which seems like a really weird place to be able to access your data, but hey, that's where it is. The reason Microsoft have done that is so that they can extract more licensing revenue from all of us, because to be able to get into it, everyone now needs a premium license, so, which again is £9 per month. So yeah, Microsoft, being the evil corporate geniuses that they are, have realized that actually if they move everyone to this model, they will make a heck of a lot more money. But actually the value that we're going to extract from that in terms of our entire team getting that data is huge. So a price worth paying, and actually allowing our managers to be able to create their own reports and manipulate the data themselves, that's probably the next step in our journey.
So with what you've just explained has gone literally over my head, because I don't know what you're talking about. I'll be completely honest, because I'm not massively into, well, I like tech, but not really into the details. So that makes me think that there will be people who will have heard what you said and gone, there's probably someone on my team that gets that, but and it all sounds great, but I'm not quite sure what that means. I guess if you take your kind of data and analytics hat off, and if you put yourself in the shoes of maybe a manager or somebody in kind of quality assurance, or in a kind of like a compliance type focused role, what do they get from what sounds like a very cool tech stack that somebody might understand the intricacies of, but they're going to love the output from?
You get the ability to visualize your data effectively and quickly, and in a way that can be manipulated live. So to explain what we mean by that, on our dashboards, which we've built, we refresh those every half an hour. So we get live care data direct from the care homes that anyone in our organization can see and can then start to drill down into to find out what is going on. So it's a better reporting tool. It's a faster reporting tool, and it eliminates human processing of analysis. So we're not reliant on, let me put it this way. Speaking to, I think it was at a CLN event actually, and I was speaking to a manager who was there, who said that every Monday morning they get in at 6:00 in the morning and spend 3 hours writing a report that has to be out by 10:00 in the morning on what has happened in the care home in the last week. I then drill down into what's in that report, and I just said, okay, my managers get emailed that information at 8 o'clock every Monday morning automatically. That's the power of Power BI and data analysis.
Did their head explode at that point? Did they?
Their head exploded when I then showed them the dashboard, which had that report on it off my mobile phone, and said, "This is updating that report actually updates every hour." So you could answer all the questions that you've got in real time off your mobile phone whilst you're on the toilet if you wanted to. That's but again, that's the power of it. It's not just oh, here's a report, here's a PDF. It's live. We set up our IT system in our business with the express thought that we should be able to run this business from anywhere in the world at any time. The exact way of describing it is 3 directors should be able to be on a beach, ideally, in my view, 3 separate beaches, and we should be able to run our business from there. And we can. We trialed this a couple of years back. We took a family holiday to the Isle of Wight. Had a lovely time, much better than you think it was going to be. But we were there on the beach with our mobile phones out, able to access live care data, and we were using that to run our business.
It's impressive stuff. And I guess that kind of as a family business owner, that's it's a nice thing to know that you've got that oversight. I guess for people, whether it be a small business or at the larger end of the spectrum as well, if you've got 130 care services or something like that, and you're a chief operating officer, there's no way you're going to be able to get around to see all of the services. You might get to each one of them maybe once a year, if you're lucky, because of the demands of that role. Knowing what's going on, seeing a trend here, being able to scratch under the surface, check out what's going on there, do a little bit of high-level data analysis. You've then got that insight that you can go and have really meaningful conversations with the internal stakeholders around that particular set of circumstances, because maybe your experience is such that you're able to shed light on wider context and experience that you're able to draw upon that maybe some of your kind of mid-level kind of management leadership team might not have seen before. And that might be the thing that makes the residents' day or saves them from falling over or anything along those lines. And that's that feedback loop, which the more you're able to do that, of course, the more valuable, of course, that gets.
I think it's a really interesting point you've just raised of a chief operating officer in a larger group. And I think this is one of the reasons why we've gone down the route of our philosophy of data analysis, philosophy of care, is that the reflection and review of the data should be done by the team. And it's because, you're right. The second you go above, we run 6 care homes. And I reckon that actually we're already at that tipping point, that it's very difficult to know the detail, for us at director level, to know the detail of what is going on in all of the care homes. I think sometimes it's genuinely difficult for the managers because so much can change on a day-to-day basis. And so having reports that forces analysis of data to other team members and delegates the responsibility of asking the so what questions is absolutely critical. But you can only do that with great data in and reports that fundamentally challenge people to ask, there's an issue, what can I do to make it better?
I guess that's where some of the coaching model starts to play out as well, which I guess that makes me think about the team. So obviously you've had an experience comparatively recently where you've spoken to a manager and you've explained that 3-hour-long report writing sessions should be a thing of the past because that's achievable through technology. And obviously that hopefully that will have had a profound impact on them, and hopefully they will have been able to work up the manage upwards and say, there's a better way, folks, we need to fix this. One would imagine that if that particular individual were kind of calling the shots, if you like, that would be a pretty easy job to be able to start sowing the seeds of undergoing that transformation process and things. But I'm a realist. People aren't always going to get their head around data and analytics. To your point, you mentioned earlier, which as soon as you start mentioning kind of things like pivot tables, the things, people will either look at you blankly if they don't know what it is, or if they do know what it is and they don't know how to use it, they'll just be a bit like, oh, that sounds big and scary. Like, how do you get your team to a point where they can start using the data that you've collected in a meaningful way?
So if we were starting this again, we would probably go a similar starting point, which is, here is some top down level reports. I think we'd probably focus on different areas, again based on how we sort of built our philosophy of care out. We start top level down, push a couple of reports out, and just simply ask, okay, what's useful about these? How do we make them better? What information do you need at what points of the day to make sure that you've got the information you need? So one example, we have a handover report. So this is everything that has happened for by residents over a couple of critical areas: amounts eaten per meal, amount of fluid drunk, have they had a bath or shower, was it offered to them, other things that we've refined over time. Brief summary of notes. That goes out automatically half an hour before handover, so we've got time to print it. And we're then using that as a report for the team to go through and evolve their thinking and reflection, and saying, okay, actually, we need this information, or here's another report. Can you send this as well? Because we want to be able to go through this today. So, we have a weights report. In some of our care homes, they like to weigh residents on certain days, and certain team members are responsible for that. Well, as part of your weighing, you need to know what was that individual's weight in the weeks prior. Well, we'll give you a piece of paper, and we'll say, here's the report. That's what it is. If it's varying a lot, or it has varied a lot, you need to be aware of that. So it's driven top down, but then so much of it is driven team upwards, and saying, this information would be really useful. We need this to improve the care that we're providing. More reflection, more coaching, working with the team. But that goes back to philosophy of care and values. Other providers may have different ideas about how it's going to work.
Back in my management consultancy days, one of the things that we used to talk an awful lot about is the fact that if you're going to undergo any type of technological or digital transformation, you have to undergo a cultural transformation. And I guess that's kind of that was our kind of parlance for bringing your team with you on the journey, and making sure that they're part of that experience themselves. So that, again, this is about feedback loops. They can feedback and say, this is meaningful to me because XYZ, depending on the context. And I guess the more that the team are involved in the decision making and the kind of the structuring and the visual analytics of said data, so it's useful for them, and they can take it away, and it's practical. It's something that can actually make their lives better, and they can support their team, and they can support the residents in a better way. Again, that's that innovation, the kind of sitting at the edges of the innovation opportunity, if you will, to be able to keep pushing things forwards as well. So that's let's think. I love in our conversations that we often go from microcosms to macrocosms in the blink of an eye. So I'm going to ask a question about data and the whole of the care sector. So what would you say that the current state within the care sector is as it relates to data and the analysis of the data?
So I think we are very much in the early stages as a sector. I think we are behind other sectors in terms of our use of data and how we analyze it. And I think that the inherent skill set for data analysis within the sector is evolving. Now, part of that, I'll go even further and say that actually, I think that data analysis skill sets within wider society And actually, because of our values are on reflection and what have you, I think reflective skills are not present in society, particularly from school leavers. I think there is actually an education gap here in terms of how society and how our workplaces are evolving. So I think we have a fundamental issue there at a macro level. In terms of data analysis within social care, the level of sophistication we were at 6 years ago compared to now is light and day. We as an organisation are producing much more sophisticated reports. And again, more promotion of Nourish. They run semi-regular Power BI learning events for their user group. When those calls started, I could just about keep up with the code. Now I can't. We're looking at much more complicated data, and that's great to see. And it's really empowering and inspiring to see other users going, here's another use case for our organization, which is not just care homes, but some at-home care providers and other providers of much more complex levels of care. And I'm also starting to see on the various online bulletin boards and question forums online, questions about Power BI and data analysis from health and care data analysts. Now, part of that is because we have more data that's available. And I think, we're all now wearing much more, wellness apps. We've got smartwatches that provide the data. So individually, we've got much more health data available to us. But I think also now companies are now exploring how they can use that health data to provide better care. So I think we're evolving. I think we're getting better. The more the Internet of Things continues to grow, the more data we have. There's just more data, so we need to do more with it. And without data analysis, which in broad terms is not just how do I look at the data, it's how do you make sure the data is in the right place, how do you manipulate it, how do you report on it, but both as a sort of here's a report, but then the proactivity of what do I do about that. Without a really embedded and understood data analysis framework and structure and skill set, we are going to drown under the weight of it. So I think that to put it into CQC parlance, I think requires improvement. But I think the next step of that is not we need to do more data analysis. It's actually we need to upskill the whole of society at the macro level, but at at our level, our social care teams around what data is, how you analyze it, and what those reflective skills are. And I'm not just talking about providers. I am talking about CQC and local authorities. We were subject to a recent CQC inspection under the new framework. Some of the reports that we issued to CQC, which are understood by our teams, were not understood by CQC, and they drew completely the wrong conclusions from that. So we have to do a lot of work to educate them in how to do that. We have the same issue with local authorities when we're making certain funding requests. So not a critique of those two organizations, it is a critique of the general skill level of data analysis that we have as a country and that we need to be solving through our education systems.
I mean, obviously that's kind of, that's clearly a massive macro challenge. And I guess that links what I wanted to end our conversation today is to be able to inform the people listening and watching this episode around what their stumbling blocks are going to be as it relates to the adoption of better data management systems, and to try and get that continuous feedback loop that we've talked about to make all those meaningful changes and things like that. I mean, I guess you've touched upon one of them, and that's just the general understanding of data and data analytics. I guess so. Talk to me about that as it relates to the kind of the leading of an organization, and maybe include as well some of the other stumbling blocks that people might be coming up against, because obviously I frame this as being like, I want people to be able to consume this and think to themselves, right, we need to go on our own data journey. Let's manage their expectations around the things that they're going to come up against, because I'm sure it's going to be one of those things that for anyone wanting to go on this journey, who hopefully they're sold on the concept and realize that this is a really, really high value strategic thing to do, help them understand exactly the things that the challenges that they're going to come up against.
I think there are three which are sort of, I guess, what I think it's the data, it's the people, and it's the purpose. I think those are your three stumbling blocks. Just riffing on the people bit, as you suggested. Yes, there's a skills gap. I think there is. No, in fact, actually, no, I don't think. I know that there is an issue in social care where our teams are low on self-confidence. We use a recruitment tool called Judgment Index. It's the one consistency that we've had ever since we've implemented that measures of self-confidence amongst carers are low compared to what a normal position. So the statement of "I'm not good with IT" is incredibly common in our organisation, from entry-level care assistant all the way through to registered manager. And if we're being completely honest with ourselves, even above that. We've got one of two options. We either break through that and we say, okay, we're going to educate, we're going to support, we're going to train. That's part of the solution. Or you build a system that removes, you remove that fundamental stumbling block of "I'm not good with IT." We're going to make this as simple as possible for you. It will be as simple as Facebook, if anybody still uses that. I guess now it's as simple as in Instagram. Does anyone use that? I don't. That's the level. That's the level we've got to be at, I'm afraid. So how we build our data analysis, how we build our reports to meet that skills gap is as important as what data we have, which is another issue. So it's about where is your data, what data do you want to analyze, and how do you make sure that it's in the right place at the right time for you to do that. For us, there is absolutely no point having a silo of data for medication, a silo of data for your actual care needs, silo of data for your employees in HR, and having to manually move the data around to be able to do the analysis. For us, it has to be in one central database and all pouring in. Nourish are really good with this because they operate as sort of a hub and spoke model. They have a number of integrations which then all feeds into Nourish, and you can extract the data from there if you need to. I know that organizations like PCS, like Access, slightly different model. They're aggregators, so they will make sure that the data is, they have a whole suite of software, and you can buy that. Different models, different approaches. Some providers will want one or the other. But thinking about what data you've got, where it is, how it's structured, and then also how you're going to make sure that your team know how to use the data. Those are two really critical, determinants of success and require quite a bit of thinking through and planning. The final stumbling block, and this takes me back to my financial modeling days, is what's the purpose and what outcomes do we want from this, and what's that data going to look like? And in order to get to that, what individual steps do we need to plan through? So if it's a question of, I want to provide reports, well, why? Is it for key issues that need immediate action? Is it for positive trends? Is it providing praise and thanks? That's the purpose of it. Is it, if we're empowering our teams, okay, well, we need to give you the information you need to make decisions, but then we need to demonstrate the outcomes of those actions, and your reporting needs to reflect that. And also for us, again, going back to reflection, if we're reflecting on data and we're saying, okay, we want you to come up with ideas and the so what question, okay, well, now we're going to give you the structure and the framework to go and do that. So that actually means fundamentally changing operating processes. Handover is not, here's a senior member of the team telling you what's going on. Handover is all the team members getting together and going, okay, this looks weird. Or I can see everything that happened. What can we do today to make it better than yesterday? So, for me, those are the three stumbling blocks.
Really important question just to finish us off. Is the juice worth the squeeze?
Oh, good question. I could be neutral on this. I'm going to be passionate and the data geek. I don't think we have a choice anymore. I think that in order to meet our regulatory requirements, irrespective of anything else, irrespective of providing great care, irrespective of the need for transparency, but just turning around to CQC and going, yeah, we know what we're doing, give us a good please, you need to have really good data analytics. So I could not see a world where care providers are not engaged in data analytics and not doing really cool stuff with their data. And I know for many providers that's a really scary comment, because it's not a skill set that we naturally have. It's not something that is actually functionally easy to deliver, given where we started from, sort of back in the last 5 years. We've had a lot of change, and to force this change again and to have this new environment, yeah, that's concerning. And I don't think that local authorities have got the funding to support it. So yeah, that's going to be a real challenge. But I think the juice needs to be squeezed out. I think that lemon needs to be sucked dry. It's going to be bitter. It's going to be horrible. But yeah, maybe we will learn to love that bitter taste in a while.
The late great Charlie Munger, one of the greatest investors that the world has ever seen, had a quote, and I'm not going to do a particularly good job of presenting this, but it was something to the effect of, if you're ever presented with a set of circumstances that isn't your favored set of circumstances, but you need to do it anyway, you sure as hell need to make sure that it is your favored set of circumstances, because it's not like you've got any choice. So you might as well get on with it. That's what that closing statement really made me think of. So, Michael, I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope it serves its purpose. I hope people will, having heard your journey and you talking through your experiences and a lot of the insights that you shared for today, if people are looking at that, the process of undergoing their data and analytics journey, of building out the right systems, getting the right tech in place, whether it be Power BI or anything else that can deliver those types of visual analytics and dashboards that can make your team, empower your team to be able to take things to the next level. Fundamentally, the juice is worth a squeeze, and it sounds like it's going to be an absolute essential going forwards anyway. So I hope that people will watch this and think, right, now's the time to crack on with things. So Michael Butcher, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Simon.